So the battles of Talavera and Torres Vedras were part of the Peninsular War of 1807 to 1814. So Talavera was in September 1809 and Torres Vedras was in 1810. So the Spanish army and Spanish guerrillas were initially allied with France and Napoleon, but then after Napoleon made his brother Joseph the king of Spain's king, the Spanish people turned against Napoleon, and so then the guerrillas basically fought against France, but they weren't united with Britain. However, the regular Spanish army, which were much weaker than the Spanish guerrillas, still fought with Napoleon due to their previous alliance. So with the Battle of Talavera, the Spanish army was really ill-equipped and they were let down by incompetent leaders. But despite this, Wellington and the British army still only managed to secure a narrow victory. Wellington basically blamed the Portuguese for this, Portugal being Britain's oldest ally and very reliable. And Wellington basically recommended that William Carr, who was the Viscount of Beresford, he recommended that he retrain the Portuguese army. And by 1810, Wellington trusted the Portuguese army enough to basically integrate it alongside the British army so they could sort of fight in a more united way. So between the Battle of Talavera and Torres Vedras was a winter of 1809 to 1810, in which Wellington built massive fortification works. The benefits of doing so were to protect supply lines, so that British could then be supplied by sea. The fortification works went across the peninsula, which was north of Lisbon, Portugal's capital, and Wellington knew that France would be unable to bring up a siege train, and a siege train is heavy artillery and engineering equipment needed to assault and destroy fortifications of a town, for example. And so Wellington knew that France wouldn't be able to bring up that equipment to break through the earthworks and the forts to reach to him, so he was very safe. And the fortification was basically known as the Lines of Torres Vedras. So then the local people of Portugal basically fled to Lisbon, and the British army used a scorched earth policy. The French were harassed by the Spanish guerrillas, and the French soldiers were very hungry and cold, and basically they weren't treated as well as the British soldiers were. And as we know from before, Wellington took great care of his soldiers in order to sort of win support from them as well. And Wellington then furthermore cracked down on slackness, which is typical of him. And so he disciplined soldiers who would spend too much time in theatres and brothels, or soldiers who requested to leave to deal with personal business back at home. But just depends. And so here we just got the battle lines of the two battles.